All rise, order in court.
Everybody be seated, please.
Judge, can I ask you something?
Yes, ma'am.
State wants to not use court exhibits. I told him I wouldn't do it until I asked you. Which states, of course.
Yeah.
Which ones? Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Eugene Griffith, and I'm the presiding judge appointed to hear this case. We've done parts of it. It's my, for y'all, for the court's record. You ready, Francis?
Yes, sir.
Am I echoing? Hope not. For the court's record, this matter came before the court last Thursday at 1 p.m. in Aiken County as a result of a culmination of a very efficient use of mitigation folks by the defense, and the state and defense reached a decision that a plea would be accepted, so we wanted to strike while the iron was hot, and we resolved this case, the indictment with the 7 counts by way of guilty plea, with the understanding we'd come together sometime in the future for a hearing on the sentencing and mitigation facts and whatnot, and the victims would be properly notified. That day is today. Thus, state ready to go?
Your Honor, we are.
All right, defense ready to go.
Yes, sir.
All right, I didn't put this on the record. This is indictment 2020 GS 21-909, which includes 7 counts, 2 counts murder, 5 counts attempted murder, and as I said, we did not entertain any sentencing portion of the trial except the plea, end of the hearing to reconvene at a later time. That time is today. Mr. Young, you representing Mr. Hopkins, I will allow y'all to go first, present your mitigating factors, then I'm going to turn it over to the state, and I want to hear from the victims' families.
Yes, sir, Your Honor. Thank you. I have marked as an exhibit, defense exhibit number 1 is a report from David Farrah, and I have Mr. Farrah on the phone. We couldn't get the video to work. David, can you hear me?
I certainly can, Boyd.
Can you say one more thing?
Yes, Boyd, I can hear you.
Is that?
I don't know what he may have to use one on this. If the green light's on one of the desks,
David, try one more time.
Yes, I can hear you fine at my end.
All right, thank you. There you are. Can you please state your name for the record?
It's David Ferrier, F-E-R-R-I-E-R.
And Mr. Farrah, have you met with Mr. Hopkins?
I met with Mr. Hopkins on several occasions, 2 weeks, 3 weeks back, and spent a number of hours interviewing him on both his military history and background and his service in Vietnam.
Have you reviewed his service records?
Extensively. Mr. Hopkins has a very large file of military records. I went through them page by page.
Did you prepare a report based on your meetings with him and your review of the records?
Yes, I did.
Is that the 8-page report that you mailed me along with attachments?
Absolutely, yes, it is.
Your Honor, I have marked as defense exhibit number 1 a copy of Mr. Farrah's report and would enter that into evidence at this time.
Be so received.
No objection, no. David, can you tell us and the judge a little bit about Mr. Hopkins' military experience and his time in Vietnam? Just sort of summarize your report.
Okay, Mr. Hopkins in the military service. In November of 1969, Mr. Hopkins was assigned to Vietnam, for which he volunteered to serve with the 101st Airborne Division was an artillery coordinator and spotter. He was stationed in the Northern I Corps area of South Vietnam, particularly in the area of operations called the Ottawa Valley. On May the 6th, 1970, Mr. Hopkins, then Captain Hopkins, was at a forward fire base called Fire Base Henderson. And that day, Fire Base Henderson came under attack by a battalion-sized North Vietnamese force. It was a day-long, very fierce battle in which the 101st Airborne lost men killed and an equal or greater number wounded. During this time, Mr. Parker was also wounded by fragmentation rounds from mortar attacks, and eventually medevaced out to Japan, where he spent a considerable amount of time recovering from those wounds. For his actions on the date, he received the Bronze Star Medal with Valor and the Purple Heart. And these awards are for distinguished service and valor during the Battle of Camp Henderson. After rather difficult physical recovery and a mental recovery from which I believe, based on what I saw, continues to this day.
And David, do you work with veterans with PTSD?
For 6.5 years, I was an outreach counselor with the Vietnam Veterans Outreach Program. My primary duties then were making contact with veterans, particularly Vietnam veterans, on the street, and getting them to come into treatment with the Veterans Administration.
Something changed about this case about 2 weeks ago, last Thursday, when you were meeting with Mr. Hopkins. Can you tell us about that meeting?
First meeting with Mr. Hopkins, I met with him out at Berryville Correctional Facility, and we at that time established Mr. Hopkins' military background and history, and I shared with him mine. Very full theater of operation is Mr. Hopkins, and we were able to establish a rapport and a certain degree of, I believe, trust in talking openly about his experiences as a veteran and his reactions to both being wounded and his subsequent decades-long request for treatment from the VA for post-traumatic stress disorder.
And sort of what changed? You went back to meet with him again after that, correct?
Yes, I returned on 2 more occasions, spending the day with Mr. Hopkins there, where we talked not only about his military history, his subsequent treatment with the Veterans Administration, but very peripherally, as I am not a legal counsel, we talked about his options in appearing in court today.
And can you tell us about that conversation and what Mr. Hopkins decided?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first part of that.
Sure. Can you tell us about that conversation and what Mr. Hopkins decided? What was y'all's?
Well, as we were able to kind of chronicle Mr. Hopkins' military history and do it from an outside perspective, beyond the shield that I think Mr. Hopkins has put up around that, we were able to see that in this case, his best course of action, the way that he could in some way get his mind around the precursors of what happened on this explosive day, which brings him before the court, and that by accepting the plea that he's going today, he would be able to have at least an acknowledgement of, 1, the character of his military service, and 2, the possible connection between the trauma of that military service and his behavior and mindset in the years following.
Thank you, Mr. Farrah. I have no further questions.
We have any questions, John?
Very well. Thank you. David, I'm gonna hang up the phone now, okay? Thank you. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
That's all from the defense at this time, Your Honor.
And Mr. Young, so I'm clear and aware on the record, the interaction with Mr. Ferrier and Mr. Hopkins is probably the main thing that encouraged him or changed his mind to accept responsibility for this action. Is that not right?
Yes, sir.
That's what I thought.
Mr. Farrah is a published author. He works with Vietnam veterans all over the country.
This came about very, very quickly because I was made aware Monday afternoon late that potential plea was available, and that's why we did it Thursday so rapidly. All right. Mr. Hopkins, you want to say anything right now? You want to wait?
Do you want to say anything right now?
Do you want to say anything right now?
Let's wait until we get. Okay.
Nothing at this time, Your Honor.
Very well. All right. Look, thank you, Police Court.
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, we have a couple of housekeeping matters first. We have the autopsy on both of the shooting victims, Your Honor, that died, and we have those available to mark as a court's exhibit if you feel the need to look at it later or if it's instructive in any way to you.
I'm instructed for mark the vote, exhibit 1 and 2.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, also we have here today Mr. Salinger and Mr. Perry, who were with Mr. Hopkins the night before this shooting took place. They were here, they were playing trivia with him. If you feel necessary, I can put them up for a interview from the witness stand, cross-examination if need be. But to summarize what they would testify to, they testified that they knew Mr. Hopkins from playing trivia with him. They were part of a trivia team together. But that night, before the shooting, that Mr. Hopkins came in and highly agitated and said that his family is disintegrating. The police were going to come to his house. Further, he went on to say if the police came to his house, he was going to shoot them. And is what Mr. Salinger would say, and said that he had a great field of vision to view people coming to his house in order to be able to do that. The other gentleman, Your Honor, oh Lord, Perry, yes, Mr. Perry. Mr. Perry was going to testify that Mr. Hopkins said he was going to shoot them all if they came to his house. He would shoot them. And the reason we wanted to submit that, Your Honor, this time it refutes some of what Mr. Hopkins said in regards to the premeditation of this whole incident. He had it in his mind the night before. He discussed that with these people, and they told him, Mr. Salinger told him to go lock all of his guns up so he couldn't get to them and hide the key till he got rid of his anger, but that didn't happen. But if you want to hear from them from the witness stand, Your Honor, they are here and available.
Considering Mr. Hopkins accepted responsibility even after he gave some of his explanations of some of the events that took place in that short time early on in the situation, he's accepted responsibility, and before me at a very close range, as y'all remember in Aiken, I was within 5 feet of him during the entire plea for the benefit of his hearing in a very close range, and I was very careful to ask him, are you aware you must waive all those defenses and claims in order for me to accept this plea? And he, without hesitation, accepted to waive any of those claims and accept responsibility for what he did. I think your proffer is appropriate, but I don't think we need live testimony.
All right, John. The autopsy for Miss Farrah Turner, Your Honor, was mostly going to be introduced to prove that she didn't die of Mercer at all. That was something that was mentioned back in Aiken last week, but she had no medical problems with Mercer at all.
And y'all talk to speak to that.
Yes, sir.
Very well.
Your Honor, we're ready for you to hear from the victims, Your Honor, and They have long awaited this day, and today is their day. This is a tremendously life-altering event for all of them, and not just all of them, but for most of the law enforcement community in Florence. This is a horrible situation, horrible thing that happened. We thought it would be beneficial to put it up step by step how it occurred chronologically for Your Honor to see in your mind's eye. And we will start with Ben Price, Your Honor, from Florence County Sheriff's Office.
Very well.
Ben, if you could tell us who you are and how you happened to be there at Mr. Hopkins' house that day and what happened to you.
Your Honor, my name is Ben Price. I am an investigator with the Florence County Sheriff's Office. On that day, October the 3rd, 2018, I was an investigator with the Florence County Sheriff's Office. I had gone to that house after going and helping Farrah Turner obtain a search warrant for the house, ultimately, that Mr. Hopkins resided, along with his son Seth and other children. Another investigator went with us, along with Farrah Turner, Sarah Miller, and two crime scene and forensics people, Ari Davis and Chase McDaniel, making 5 of us there. Your Honor, we had 3 unmarked cars, and we had 2 very clearly marked cars that day when we approached the residence and pulled into the driveway. We went up to the door that day. We knocked on the door. No one came to the door. We knocked on the door again. And we weren't met that day, Your Honor, with a person as if someone knocked on your door or my door. We were met with bullets coming out of the door. And I'm fortunate to be standing here. There's some that aren't. There's some that have been through a lot of pain and suffering to be here today. When Mr. Hopkins came out on the porch that day, he moved. He was not infirm. He was not invalid. He didn't come rolling out of the house like it was a convalescent home. He came out on his own free will. On his own 2 feet, holding a rifle, shooting at us over and over and over for an extensive period of time. We weren't there, Your Honor, to kick his door down. We weren't dressed as such. We were wearing black polo shirts, green pants. I didn't even have boots on that day, so there's no way that I looked like an NBA regular. I had tennis shoes on. Beside the point. But we didn't have goggles, we didn't have helmets, we didn't even have rifles. We never pulled our guns out until after bullets came out of the door. And he came out. So there was no SWAT team there to quote unquote attack this person, attack this house. It's not how that happened, Your Honor. We were just there to do our job. And as we discussed before in the stand your ground hearing, Your Honor, I've met Mr. Hopkins numerous times before, and obviously this was never the response that we got as law enforcement. So it was very different on that day. After we were there, and Farrah was shot initially along with Sarah, I couldn't find Sarah, but I could see Farrah as she lay motionless at the bottom of his stairs as he came out of the house to attempt to shoot at her again, but he was not able to. And he went back inside. as I sit up against the front of the house, looking at Farrah, he shot her again as she lay motionless, defenseless. She didn't have a gun in her hand. She was laying on her stomach. And I could see the round impact the side of her body, with smoke coming out of the side of her body. That's pretty cold. After calling for help, and numerous other people that are here that came, responded to that call for help. You hear sirens coming, and then there was a loud crash, which ultimately was Mr. Williamson that you'll hear from. He didn't know what he was coming to, just that he was coming to help. And he had to suffer for that. He didn't have a gun out. He was in his car, driving. Mr. Carraway, he was getting out of his car. He didn't have a gun pointed at him. He was way down the road. So that's what I would like to say is there's no initial threat that came that would not have come if he didn't do what he did that day. That's roughly the timeline until he decided to come out, which when he did come out of the house, he was using a walker. It was very different how he came out of the house the first time. He didn't have a problem moving around without that walker initially. Then he was taken into custody.
Dan, how has this affected you in different areas of your life?
It's affected me a good deal. I too now have what I would say PTSD from this. But I have those same feelings that I'd have to do what happened on that day. I've prepared something to read. Solicitors, is the time.
Yeah, you got something to read?
Yes, sir.
It'd be the perfect time for it.
That's okay, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
It's the previous question, Your Honor. How has Mr. Hopkins or Fred, how has he affected me? And I'm not going to really answer that question because I don't feel that he needs to know that. I have some descriptions here that I would like to say. But today, during this proceeding, there are going to be numerous people that they're going to speak after me, that they have a lot more to say than I can. The things that they're going to say about their injuries, their struggles, their will to overcome what this person has done to them, it outweighs anything that I can tell you about myself. On that day, Your Honor, I was fortunate enough, I witnessed heroism in ways that most of this country you can only see in a movie, maybe a television show. I witnessed in the beginning law enforcement officers, they were doing what they were sworn to do, protect the children the best way that they knew. After everything went south, or sideways, countless people, they came rushing to what was hell on earth. They didn't know their fate, they just knew they were coming to their fellow officers. At the time, I didn't know who was behind each of those sirens. But each different one that I heard, it gave me hope that everything was going to be okay. So I ask Your Honor that everyone, they listen, they take into account what each of the following they have to say in this court, and really try to understand what they went through to be here today, 5 years later. I hope that everyone that is listening can also stop and try to understand what it could have been like that fateful afternoon. To have a person try with such will, such calculated movement, to kill you for just doing your job, especially if there was nothing to hide. I will never understand any of what the person thought why someone would want to do what they did that day. Having to deal with PTSD myself, I can't imagine using that as an excuse to do what happened. It's poor and it's disgraceful. It hurts my heart, and I'm sure many others, think that someone would disgrace the memories of so many brave servicemen and women who served in the Vietnam War. To use that as an excuse to murder your own countrymen. So many people never got to come home to even do that. To the rest of the people here, I'd like to say, I'm sorry for what happened. I feel bad for it. I hate that any of those things happened, and all of you, your families, especially Farrah, Terrence, will never leave me. And to hear your honor to the court, vicariously to the person I say, bonne chance, et bon débarras.
Ben, in the clothes that y'all had on that day, were there any markings or badges or anything to indicate you from the sheriff's office?
Yes, sir. There was, on the polo shirt, there was a badge, yellow in color, distinctly different than the black shirt. It wasn't camouflaged or hidden, very clear. We all had badges on our belts. And I'd like to reiterate again that 2 of the vehicles that we were in were marked with Florence County Sheriff's Office markings.
Your Honor, the next person that was struck, that was right behind Farrah and Ben, was Sarah Miller. And Sarah, I'd like to invite you to explain to the court what happened and how it's affected you.
Yes, sir.
Can you close to that microphone?
Can you hear me? Your Honor, my name is Sarah Miller. I'm an investigator with the Florence County Sheriff's Office. And I was an investigator with the Florence County Sheriff's Office on October 3rd, 2018. So I responded to the Hopkins residence that day after being advised by my partner, Investigator Farrah, about this case she had in which the suspect, Seth Hopkins, had been raping. And so she wanted to go to that house because Kelly Hopkins had been feeding her pictures of evidence that was allegedly in Seth Hopkins' house. The Hopkins house in Seth's room was dirty underwear of the victim that he collected like trophies. So at that point, I agreed I would go, be more than happy to go with her because it's our job to protect children and do the best we can. So it wasn't my case, but she's my partner, and what she went through, I went through. So I met with her and Investigator Price at the fire station on Poffmeyer Road while we waited for Chase and Ari to meet us. And while sitting there, Farrah was on the phone, which I later found out to be Mrs. Hopkins. She got off the phone and Investigator Turner advised me that she'd be there in 10 to 15 minutes, but it was our concern that those 10 to 15 minutes would give them crucial time to destroy evidence. So we made the decision to go ahead to the house. Farrah pulled up first. Investigator Price behind her, unless I got that order wrong, but Chase McDaniel behind Ben, and then I was fourth, and Ari was last. So Ben, Farrah, and I were on the porch, like you said, knocking on the door, no answer. Knocking on the door, no answer. Never banging on the door, never once. And I remember making the statement that he probably wasn't going to answer until his wife got there, but unfortunately I was exceedingly wrong in that aspect because he did come to the door and greeted us with gunfire. And the first shot went off and I thought, this is some weird pain to be this close to a gunshot. So time actually slows down when you get shot. So after realizing exactly what had happened, scrambling off the porch, looking back to figure out where my people went to, watching Farrah get shot in the back as she fell down the steps and the smoke coming out of her back. I scrambled beside the house, knowing I couldn't get to her without re-exposing myself. And in that position is where I got to attempt to figure out where I was hit at, because at that point I could smell the blood, smell the gunpowder, and I realized that I was in really bad trouble. So I was far outgunned because, like Investigator Price said, we didn't have rifles. I had a small handgun that had 6 rounds in it. I was exceedingly outgunned in an unsafe spot. So I knew I had to move, and I saw his truck, and I thought to myself, like I said in the standard ground trial, fuck it, because if I get shot again, I get shot again, but I couldn't stand there and just wait to be executed. So I moved behind the truck, crawled as fast as I could and as low as I could, and there I waited. And I waited, and I heard the sounds of sirens finally coming, but over the sirens were, I couldn't even tell you how many gunshots that day. And I can't attest to what other people went through, because while trying to keep myself alive, I was unaware of pretty much everything that was going on behind me. No idea. The whole time I thought it was just me and Farrah that had been shot. And I remember watching the minutes tick by, and finally being rescued by my guys. And I remember them dragging me to the MRAP at the time and loading me on the back, and I just remember collapsing on top of one of my guys. And I think about how he went home at the end of that day with my blood soaked in his uniform. But they managed to get me and Farrah, and I remember them bringing us back to somewhere, but I don't know at that point. I was in and out of consciousness. And I distinctly remember them discussing who was going to get the stretcher on the ambulance, because there was only one ambulance at that point that I knew of, and for some reason they decided I got the stretcher. So I was worse off, and I was okay with that, honestly. And I thought it was just the two of us at that point. And I remember going to the hospital and them saying we're going to Carolinas, and no offense to those who worked at Carolinas at the point, but I immediately thought, this is it, I'm definitely dying. Sorry. The whole ambulance ride, apparently I was in and out of consciousness because the EMS worker kept telling me to open my eyes and to stay with him. And in my mind I thought, I'm here, like can you not see it? But I guess he couldn't. So I remember getting to the hospital, vaguely being rolled off the ambulance into the ER, and then that was it. 11 days later, I woke up after being on the vent for 8 days, unconscious for 3 days after that. And in mass confusion, upon waking up and coming off of all the narcotics they'd given me, I didn't want to know what my injuries were. I was scared to look at myself. I had the nurses to block my view anytime they had to do anything. And it wasn't until not long before I left the hospital that I discovered exactly the extent of everything. Was that when his very first shot was the one that hit me, and it entered and it fractured. And it hit my small intestine, my large intestine. It hit my stomach. It fractured my diaphragm. It caused 3 lacerations to my lower left lung. And it blew out a section of my ribs. In the hospital, I woke up and I had a wound vac, and I don't know if you know what that is or if you've ever experienced it. But it's hell, is what it is. Because they stuff you with styrofoam and pretty much vacuum seal your wound closed. And every 2 to 3 days, they have to rip it back open and rip the styrofoam out of your stomach. And redo it. I had that wound back for almost 2 months. And on top of that, I ended up being a 30-year-old female with a colostomy bag for 4 months. And that might not mean much to many people, but it kind of causes a lot of self-consciousness. So, that's what happened to me that day. But if you don't mind, I'd like to read my statement.
Please feel free.
Sorry.
Just take your time.
Your Honor, if I hadn't been ordered or advised to tell the court the extent of the physical trauma I suffered as a result of Fred Hopkins shooting me, then I would never have said a word about it in front of him, because frankly, I don't think it is any of his business. Since we all know he would get off on it because he's a cruel and evil being, because the term man is too good a term for him, and he delights in the pain and suffering of others. He probably won't even listen to a word of what any of us has to say. He'll sit in that chair and he'll continue his act of being infirm and hard of hearing. So what I will say is this. These are the things I will forever remember when I close my eyes. I remember the gunshot and the inexplicable pain I felt as we scrambled off the porch. I remember my friend and my partner falling down the steps with smoke coming out of her back. I remember taking the biggest risk of my life and moving forward and moving from one unsafe area of cover to another, praying I didn't get shot again. I remember sitting there watching the time pass on my phone that I had actually silenced in fear of giving away my location. I remember answering a phone call from my brother and whispering to him that I love him and asking him to tell my father the same. I remember not being able to breathe. I remember the coppery smell of my blood mixed with the smell of gunpowder. I remember the constant barrage of gunshots and wondering if they would ever end or if the next one would be my last. I remember my guys rescuing me and putting me on the back of the MRAP and telling me they had to go get Farrah. I remember being laid on the back of a truck and begging someone to not let me die. I remember taking an ambulance ride and holding the hand of what I could have sworn was Farrah because I was unaware anyone else but the 2 of us had gotten shot. I remember the blonde nurse in the ER rubbing my head and telling me everything will be okay. I remember waking up in the hospital 11 days later and trying to figure out why my partner was so far away from me at another hospital when we had been together. I remember the confusion while learning and trying to process the extent of the evil Fred Hopkins accomplished that day. I remember the excruciating pain of wound vac changes along with shattered and missing ribs. I remember the feeling of helplessness, like a child, like the ones we swore to protect. Having to rely on medical staff to move me, turn me, care for me, and perform the basic task for myself that I could only do 2 weeks prior myself. I remember the colostomy bag that I had to have for 4 months, 4 agonizing months, filled with so much self-loathing and low self-esteem from the embarrassment I felt as a 30-year-old female with a colostomy bag. I remember the 9 surgeries I've had in the past 5 years. I remember the years spent believing no one could or would ever love me for how damaged and hideously scarred I was. But what I remember most and will always remember is this. Despite an ER doctor telling his nurses that I was gonna die, I was so damn determined to crawl out of the grave that Fred Hopkins tried to put me in. And because of that, I came out stronger than I've ever been. What I will never remember is his ugly face from this day forward. Fred Hopkins is such a worthless coward that he doesn't even deserve to live in infamy. His name should never be remembered. But what should be remembered are the sacrifices of law enforcement and first responders who rushed to our aid when we were unfairly ambushed for doing our job trying to protect his young daughter. And instead, he decided to protect his child molesting adult son and to ultimately protect himself because frankly, Seth had to learn that behavior from someone, and since he never left Fred's side, I have to assume Fred taught him. Fred Hopkins is a disgrace to all those in the armed forces who have fought in battle with honor and dignity. Shame on him trying to blame his reprehensible actions on PTSD and flashbacks. Many soldiers and servicemen and women with true PTSD fight every day to simply stay alive, and he makes a mockery of their struggle by trying to use PTSD as his pathetic defense when really Fred Hopkins is just evil incarnate. My father was a true hero who earned a Purple Heart after almost dying on a battlefield in Vietnam where he served in the 173rd Airborne Division. And when he returned home, he served on the South Carolina Highway Patrol for over 36 years, protecting people and enacting justice. I watched him experience numerous flashbacks from PTSD over the course of my life, and never once did he pull out his gun and shoot innocent people. And he always carried one, knowing evil like Fred existed in the world. Not even when a Vietnamese woman went running past him yelling "stop" in Vietnamese to her young child who had gotten away from her in the store. And when fireworks went off, my father didn't start attacking people nearby. He collected himself like a grown man and removed himself from the situation. Fred Hopkins has never once been a good person. He has lived his miserable life with selfish intent. And now he gets to end his life in the place he honestly should have been long ago. So enjoy general population in prison, because those of us who have known him longer than these 5 years know Fred Hopkins can't keep his arrogant, narcissistic mouth shut. So I'm sure he will have a swell time in prison for the few remaining months or years he has left. And after that, I hope he enjoys the fires of hell.
Thank you, Ms. Miller.
May it please the court?
Yes, sir.
Next, we will hear from R.A. Davis Chandler, and as she approaches the microphone, I would just ask you, investigator with the sheriff's office, if you would just tell the court what you went through that day and how it's affected you, what you went through, your injuries, and how it's affected you.
My name is Aaliyah Chandler. And all your questions will be answered in my statement.
Absolutely.
My life was promising before the shooting. Everything was starting to fall in place. I went back to school to get my master's in Homeland Security, so I could work with my dream jobs, such as the U.S. Marshals or the FBI. I was looking forward to having a big wedding, kids, and etc. Then everything started going backwards. My life changed tremendously since the shooting. Things I used to do, I can't do anymore. When my family used to have events, there were times I couldn't participate because I couldn't walk. There were many nights I cried myself to sleep. But Hopkins, you would pay for every tear that was shed. I didn't understand why things were not going as planned, but everything happens for a reason. My life made a 360 quick. I do not like being around large crowds or gatherings because I get nervous thinking someone's going to pull out a gun and start shooting. For a long time, I couldn't even stand by a window because I would have panic attacks thinking someone's watching me or was out there to get me. I have been in counseling since the shooting, and I'm still going strong. I am in a program that helps pay for situations like mine, and it's there as long as I need it. On that day of the shooting, after hearing he got a gun, everything went in slow motion. Standing there talking to myself, where should I hide? In the pool or should I run to the woods? It was so scary. Having Chase by my side helped me out a lot. I thank God for him because he gave the best directions like he done this before. He was calm and patient. I was in shock. I couldn't think straight and I was fidgety. When I was shot, I didn't even know Chase had to tell me. After seeing my leg, after I got out of the hospital, I knew that I had a long road ahead of me. I suffered from physical and mental injuries. I had a total of 7 surgeries, and my doctor said there are more to come as I get older. I had to learn how to walk and bathe myself. I stayed in the hospital for 2 weeks and in rehab for 1. I had several muscle veins and nerves in my left leg that was gone. Mentally, I'm not okay. I have my days. Some nights I can't sleep because I have a lot of flashbacks and a lot of what-if questions. I pray to God every night that He ease my mind and give me peace. I went back and to work in April of 2019. After that, it was on and off because I had a lot of surgery. What I want to see happen to the defendant is for the judge to let everyone who was affected by the shooting to have a day with him to express the damage that he has done. I also would like to express how the world is a much more evil place because of his presence here. I will leave everything in God's hands now, because when it's time for Judgment Day, and the defendant has to stand before him, he's going to wish he was dead a long time ago. But I pray that God have mercy on his soul.
And for the record, that's Chase McDaniel. The Chase he's referring to is Investigator Chase McDaniel with the Florence County Sheriff's Office. He couldn't be here today. As you may recall, he did testify in the Stand Your Ground hearing.
I remember.
Your Honor, the reason he's not here today is a pretty important reason. He's celebrating his wedding anniversary. So that's why he's not here.
Well, I'm glad he's been able to enjoy himself today. That's a great thing.
Your Honor, we'd like to call Scott Williamson of the Florence Police Department. Scott, if you would start out by explaining to us what happened that day, how you got called to see what happened to you when you got there.
Yes, Your Honor, if I may. The evening of October 3rd, that afternoon, I was actually on my way home. My day was done. I had just stopped next to another officer discussing some law enforcement business when the dreaded tone out that none of us want to hear came out. And the words, "Officers, down. Without question, we responded to assist just outside the city limits of Florence. I didn't know who was there. Didn't care. Just fellow officers. As I responded, I had one thing on my mind: to help. Whatever I could do. I responded in an unmarked vehicle. At the time, I was a sergeant from the crime scene unit, Florence Police Department. Blue lights flashing in the dash, in the windshield. Siren going. As I approached, Deputy McDaniel saved my life. As I could audibly hear what was going on and realized this is gunfire and it sounded like a war zone, he was waving me off. As soon as I put my vehicle in park, I realized what was going on, put it back in drive, ducked down, went to leave, and I caught around through the windshield and back in. Immediately, my right side is paralyzed completely, with the exception of the movement of my hand. Gas pedal goes to the floor. I accelerate my vehicle into another victim's home, where I was stuck there. I don't even remember how long. Of course, it felt like forever. Bullets flying. I could hear and I had no idea in relation really to where I was at the time. But I was aware enough to know that there was a fight on. But I was pinned in a vehicle and couldn't get out. Throughout all the fire alarms going off, the confusion, radio is still just chaotic. I hear a voice. Another deputy's there, giving me comfort, doing everything he possibly can to pull me out. Ultimately, I got out of that vehicle. He stayed with me as I laid on the ground bleeding. I remember every detail that day. I remember everything. I remember being transported in an MRAP, being thrown in the back of a pickup truck and being triaged in the back of the truck, a pickup truck. Being thrown in an ambulance and ultimately ended up in the hospital. I remember telling doctors and nurses, please clean my face up. Don't let my wife see me in blood like this. I remember the officers that were lying in the hallway, concerned about what was going on. Ultimately, after I was put to sleep in the operating room, and the last thing that I heard was a doctor tell me, we're going to take care of it. I can't tell you what happened the next 3 or 4 weeks. I know from being told that I was in the hospital here in Cloud for 2 weeks before being transported to Atlanta, Georgia to set share, where I spent the next several months in extensive rehab. When I didn't think I'd ever get out of a wheelchair, I did. I made it to a walker, made it to a cane, and ultimately made it just walking on my own for a good while with an electronic device. Ended up having blood clots that almost cost me my life. I still suffer today from partial injuries on my right side. That has cost me a lot. I stand here today a totally different man than I was on the morning of October 4th. Standing stuck beside each other, even I don't believe it. But I'm here for all of these people. myself. I'm here for the people that's out there. Let them know, despite a bad incident, we can still overcome. And not let somebody take something from us. You just don't deserve it. For 5 years, I thought about when this day came and what I would say. For the last 2 weeks, I've struggled. What am I going to say? Ultimately, Your Honor, after 18, a little more than 18 years in law enforcement here in Florence, I put on that uniform every day knowing that someday, maybe today, we make the ultimate sacrifice. Every officer that's standing in here, that's sitting in this courtroom, that's in the courtroom next door, every officer across this nation does it on a daily basis because they know it's a calling. They know that one day it could happen. The thing about it is we do it because we think that there will be justice if something did happen. Regardless of whatever penalty is imposed here today or carried out, there is no justice in this. Given the defendant's, Frank Hopkins' age, his medical condition, there's no justice in this. I seriously doubt he will survive any lengthy amount of time. It didn't matter if he was 20 years old, there's no justice in it in what he did. None of us can fix it, none of us can take it back. We want a Monday night quarterback and go back, try to get you to the door faster. Turn just a little bit sooner. We can't. Every one of us will have to sit here and struggle with this the rest of our lives. I wish I could sit here and tell you, regardless of my medical miracles that have taken place with me, that I don't wake up in cold sweats. I wish I could tell you, Your Honor, that I don't think every day, today's going to be the day something goes wrong upstairs and I make a bad decision. I have that fear. I think I'll ever lose that fear. After everything was all said and done, and I started to hear what was going on, and I could comprehend what actually happened weeks and months after, I was not home to be able to be with my family. I was not home to be able to be with my fellow officers in blue, my physical family. I was not home to say goodbye to Terrence and Farrah. Your Honor, nothing can fix this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Next, we have Travis Scott, Florence Police Department. And if you could tell the court what happened that day, take us through what happened with you that day, what injuries you incurred, and how has that affected you even up to this day?
Well, that day I was part of the community action team. Roughly around 4 o'clock. Just like my brother said, heard the tone across the radio where you never want to hear officer down. As soon as I heard that, I started running towards the vehicle. The next thing I heard was Central Dispatch saying that the defendant, the assailant, was reloading the gun. Once I got to my vehicle, responded myself along with other officers. my vehicle. As he was going to the truck of his vehicle, getting his rifle, was approaching him so we could come up with a game plan of our approach. As I'm walking up towards Brian, and this is my understanding as I heard another fire, gunfire. My left leg left from under me. This is like Sarah was dead. Things started slumping down. I noticed that my rounds was falling to the ground. At that current time, like in my mind process, I believe I was shot. At that same time, my military training kicked in. I stand back up to low crawl. A low crawl back to my vehicle, which is clearly marked blue black Charger. Because I was also wearing a black vest that had Booty Street crossover. Low crawl back to my vehicle. At that time, Officer Hart came running towards me, check on me. Another fire came out, he got struck. Once he went down to the ground, he noticed to our right, fire truck was there. I believe it was a fire truck. Remember seeing Darren Yarborough, another officer. As Darren Yarborough was coming towards us, I told him to stop. Stay there with a little problem too. At the same time, I was still in the process, like, never been shot before. I thought I would feel more pain and things of that nature. At least the adrenaline was going on. So when I actually got to the fire truck and I wanted to say another officer on that, man, you bleed. At that time, we got on the radio and dispatch put it out that I was struck. They made me. At that time, Officer Starling gave his SUV back up to us and we got in the vehicle and we went from there to the back of the ambulance. Now how I felt about the situation, to be honest, piss off then, still piss off now. To know that he want to use the excuse as to I've been in war. I served in 2 wars. Never have I mistaken anybody in this room to be my enemy. To know that you shot me from over 300 yards. That's telling me you had to line on the sight, look down that barrel, and pull the trigger. Now, last time I checked, I don't look like somebody who was fighting a war in Vietnam. At least not as the enemy. Last time I checked. So yes, I'm pissed off about this. Yes, I dealt with it emotionally because of knowing that all of them went through. And I was responding to them to help them. And time I questioned myself, I wish I could have done more. So yes, it affected me, still affected me. To know that you sniping me down, shooting at us as though I'm a prey, like you the hunter and I'm the deer. Yes, I'm pissed off and silly. There's no excuse for that. Yes, it's like you I served 2 wars. So yes, it still is affecting me, you probably can tell. It affected my family. It affected, I know it affected the community who live there in Venice Place. And by the way, I pass by that place every day because of where I live. So yes, I have times I have my little flashbacks. I have to pass by there. Because I live down from that subdivision. So yes, it has hurt me more mentally than physically. I had my surgery, but now I ain't gonna break it up and just don't stand or prepare to what my fellow brothers and sisters went through, so I'm not even gonna bring that up. But yes, I had my surgery. So more or less, I'm more pissed off. I had to wait 5 years to get here this morning. 5 years. 5 years to get here. Now, honestly, what I want to do, I know the court won't allow. 5 years, give me 5 minutes. But I know they're gonna allow that. So that's how I feel right now. Again, my heart goes out to them who I was trying to get to. Wish I could have done more. That's all I can say. Wish I could have done more. But like the words say, I mean the word, I mean the Bible. Vengeance is not mine. At the end of the day, vengeance is the Lord's. And we all have to bow our heads and have to answer for all we got to do when we deal on this earth. So I'm leaving in God's hand. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Travis. Next, we'll hear from Brian Hart, Florence Police Department.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good
And
afternoon.
I'll ask you the same questions. You probably heard, just tell us what you went through that day and how it's affecting you, your injuries, and how it's affecting you even up to this day.
Your Honor, it all started, I was supposed to get off at 3 p.m. that day. I got stuck over working a DUI, so I got stuck late, turned in my DUI paperwork, call comes out, the officer down over at Vintage Place, so I was at the city center at the time, so by the time I get there, it's going to be over. I'll just be there directing traffic and stuff like that. So I rushed there, coming out Vintage Place. We were told to go right. I seen some deputies going left. I was like, that's kind of weird. We went the wrong direction. But as soon as we came down on Mr. Hopkins Road, there was somebody, I don't know who it was, but they was waving, hey, don't come down here, don't come down here. So there was a fire truck to the right, so I pulled to the left. We got out, it seemed like it was over. It was kind of quiet at the time, at least in my head I thought it was. So I went back in my car, get my rifle. At the time, Travis got shot. I was like, oh, this ain't good. We're in a bad spot right here. We don't know where it's coming from. We didn't know where the guy lived at. So you're just sitting by your car, just waiting to be murdered, basically. Because you don't know where the bullets are coming from. You don't know how many people there are. So it's tough. You're just waiting there, waiting to die. But eventually, after Travis got shot, I was like, I'm gonna go help him. And sometime in between, I got shot in the hand. And the bullet actually got lodged in my finger, but they had to dig it out. But it's still nothing compared to what everybody else's injuries are. So, insignificant. But it did hurt. It was on fire. That's pretty much it. My car was shot 3 times, so he at least tried to shoot me 3 other times. But luckily he missed.
And how is it affecting you even up to this day? How has it affected you?
It just hurts. Like I said, every once in a while your hand will hurt when it's cold. It'll break every now and again because it's so weak. You had to do a lot of like therapy for PTSD. You had me out there talking to animals. But I did what I had to come back.
And as we see, you have made it back, as have most of you. Thank you.
Thank you. That's pretty much it, sir.
Thank you.
Your Honor, next, we're going to get the next 2 families are going to be representing Terrence Carraway and Farrah Turner. We're going to start with Allison Carraway, the widow of Terrence Carraway, but before I yield to her, just to briefly state, since he's not here obviously to speak for himself, Terrence, when he responded, as you heard the other officers responded, by the time Terrence got there, he was there less than 2 minutes from my count and reviewing everything before he was fatally struck in the right chest. You've got the autopsy report, Your Honor. I'm not going to get into the details of that out of respect for the family. But so he was struck, as the other officers indicated, responding to that scene. He was extracted. His fellow law enforcement officers were able to get to him, extract him. He was taken to McLeod. He did not survive. Died in the emergency room. At this point in time, you don't really need to hear anything else from me. I'm going to yield to Allison and whoever, and if she would just introduce whoever else from the family wants to speak on Terrence's behalf. So I'll yield to her at this time, Your Honor.
Your Honor, if it would be okay if my son Rashad stand here with me.
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. It'll be just fine, and I appreciate him attending to you.
Can everybody hear me? Sergeant Terrence Carraway is the definition of an ultimate protector, and I could never be more proud and honored to be his wife. Hopkins claims that he was protecting his family when he ambushed law enforcement, endangering lives. His murderous rampage did not end until many were wounded and with my husband and best friend being brutally murdered. You took the earthly life of an outstanding community and family leader. For that reason, you deserve to feel the hurt. You deserve to feel the weight of our loss, our pain, our anguish. However, your vicious acts of violence reveal the kind of man you are. You are evil and weak. Over the course of the last 5 years, you have proven to the world that you are not even half of the man my husband was. In fact, your heinous crime has only catapulted my husband's legacy and greatness to span across this entire nation. Yes, a traumatic void is left with my family. And we are empty. We are with sadness. But rest assured that you will reap what you sow. What do I know? I know that my husband is in heaven, and he's still protecting his family. I find myself at times closing my eyes and seeing his big, bright smile and throwing up his deuces. I pray for strength and healing for Katie and Investigator Farrah, Maxine Turner's family as they continue on their new journey. I pray that the 9 officers involved will gain some type of closure and that our bond will never be broken. I pray that all first responders can gain some type of closure or begin some type of closure to this. Special thanks to the Florence Police Department family that my husband worked for over 30 years. He was also an Air Force veteran of 23 years. I want to put special thanks out to that department because without them and their support, our family would be destroyed. To my husband's squad, the D Squad, we are locked and linked forever. I thank the solicitor's office for their guidance in bringing this to a guilty plea. Lastly, our family is thankful for the outpouring and unending support from everyone around the world. We have made it over this hurdle, and we will continue to carry on his work to be better, to better the communities through our Terrence Carraway Foundation. The moment you decided to pull the trigger on October 3rd, 2018, your life sentence and your final destination was set in motion. There is a higher judgment for all of us, and until you admit your egregious behavior was wrong, you will continue down the dangerous path you are bound for now. Ultimately, God is the final judge and jury. My resolve is stronger than ever to ensure that my husband's death will serve as an inspiration for all families going through this kind of senseless murders. My husband's only goal in joining law enforcement was to serve and protect. I am proud that he did that until he took his final breath. On behalf of my entire family, we are and always will be Carraway strong. Thank you. Respectfully submitted, Allison Carraway. This is my son, Terrence Rashad Carraway, and he will be making a statement.
Thank you, Ms. Carraway.
My name is Terrence Rashad Carraway. I'm the only child of Terrence Carraway and Allison Carraway. My dad's been in law enforcement my entire life. Since I was a little boy, he used to bring me up there almost every week. I know all these officers I grew up around, and he was known as Shaft, the cool man, the man with the confidence of a giant. Your Honor, the day I'll never forget, October 3rd, 2018, me and my I'm married now, but at the time with my soon-to-be wife, we were on the way to our first marriage council for our wedding. And I saw it on Facebook, and I said, I know I can find out what's going on. Let me call my daddy. Called him, nothing. Then I'm getting people coming to the house. Let's go to the hospital. And I don't have to get into what happened after that. The day my life literally flipped upside down because this evil, pathetic person felt like starting a shooting war with the people sworn to protect and serve the community. This abomination shot my dad, my best friend, like he was hunting deer in the woods. My dad didn't deserve this. He worked 32 years of his life as a cop and 23 years in the Air Force, and to be shot and killed at work like that was just awful. I never in a million years would have thought my dad would be shot and killed in the middle of the street. He would talk to me about retirement plans every week, and to be so close and him not getting there is saddening. This has greatly affected my life since this piece of trash committed this crime. I personally deal with not being able to sleep. I'm constantly afraid somebody's gonna break into my house and injure me or my family. I'm no longer able to trust people like I did before, and I'm kind of lost in this world. I'm trying to keep myself from failing, but not knowing what to do anymore. All the while, now I'm the man of the Carraway family. That's a big responsibility that I was thrown into instantly because of this tragedy. My dad missed my wedding that he was a part of planning. The biggest thing that my dad never got to see is his first grandchild. That evil man took that away from me and my wife. I'm no longer myself and I don't feel as if I will ever get back. It seems like I'm physically losing, but I motivate myself to keep going because that was the vision of my dad. And I picture my dad sometimes, laying on that in that table and lifeless. It flashes in my head and it's almost embedded. But I say daily, no, Rashad, you're stronger. People will never understand how close me and my dad were. And that pathetic piece of old garbage took that away from me and everybody else. I can keep going, but you get it. I believe in the future justice will prevail and this evil man will be destroyed one way or another. I was taught discipline and how to respect others. October 3rd taught me anything can happen in the blink of an eye. That morning, at 5 o'clock in the morning, I was leaving the house and my daddy being overprotective like he was, he popped out his room in a dark silhouette and he was like, "Where you going, Rashad?" Knowing I was going to work. And I was like, "Dad, really, I'm going to work." And then he was like, "All right. See you later, Bubba." That's it. That's them words. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Carraway.
Daniel Blathers is the brother of Terrence Carraway. He would like to say as well.
Daniel Blathers, I'm the brother of Terrence Carraway. October 3rd, 2018, I was sitting in my office and police cars dashing down West Evans Street. Me not knowing what's going on, and like Rashad would say, "Hey, let's call Channel 15 News," which is Terrence Carraway, to find out what's going on. And I made the phone call, and there was no answer. So I waited a few minutes, and I made another phone call, and there was no answer. By then, ambulances came rushing back down West 7th Street, heading towards McLeod. So I made another phone call. There was no answer. And I finally got a phone call from my nephew saying, "Hey, come to the hospital." Then I knew that tragedy had struck our family. Only to sit there and wait for the results, and the doctor come out and says a large black officer has passed, not his name. So since then, where I work is right beside the office of Sheriff Fred Hopkins. And for the past 4.5 years, I'm reminded daily of that name. I am reminded constantly, and even in the first year, of people coming to take my picture and watch my office because they feel like, hey, he's gonna do something. Or even officers even telling me, "I can't see how you can even go to work. But I know God has a bigger plan. So we're here." The past 4 and 5 years have been tremendous toll on my family. But through God's grace, we're here. So, Your Honor, I will share these two statements, one from me and one from my sister in Ghost. The first being hers. My brother did not deserve to have his life end this way. When I received the call from my nephew Rashad that Terrence had been shot, I just knew he pulled through and he was all right.
I rushed to the hospital and got another phone call that no one should ever have to hear. When I think of his last moments alive, I think of all the pain he must have endured. I visualize him trying to survive, trying to take cover from many shots being fired. My brother was a protector with a genuine caring spirit. The rock of our family was taken away from us. The emotional toll of losing Terrence has impacted my family tremendously. No more holidays, family birthdays will be spent with him. Places and activities make it challenging without experiencing emotional pain. My son took his first steps to Terrence because he knew that he would be there to catch him if he fell. My family saw Terrence as our safety net, just like a safety net catches you and prevents you from hitting the ground. Our safety net hit the ground on October 3rd. I will forever have a sense of emptiness. He only wants to live the rest of his life with happiness and a sense of accomplishment. No one should ever have to go through that tragical loss, losing a loved one of a senseless act. Pure evilness was in the house that day. Feeling the need to open fire on police officers was clearly dressed in uniform was intentional. The manipulative tactics and bogus motions that have led to 5 years later have caused us to relive that tragic day. I'm not going to be able to see or hear my brother again. PTSD made you take away loved ones. Why? You're not a man, nor were you a true protector. True definition of weakness and devoid moral principles. Terrence was true light, and darkness would never prevail in this life or the next. Sister of the late Terrence Carraway and Gozi Onwuka. Your Honor, I would like to share this with the court. October 3rd, 2018, life as we know it will forever be changed. A cowardly, senseless act of violence with no remorse was committed in Venice Place. Today, 5 years later, we are here to learn the fate of an individual that has played around with the justice system and the lives of several families as we have sought closure to that tragic day. Your Honor, as a man, it is hard to live each day and stand by and watch your family and friends suffer in silence. To watch them constantly go to therapy for depression and anxiety, and to watch kids shed tears dealing with the loss of a loved one taken away too soon. For a family to constantly be reminded on a weekly and sometimes daily basis of this cowardly act. It is difficult to see all of this and know you could do nothing to help ease their pain or bring them comfort. To suffer myself with constant mental breakdowns and depression. It is said that God doesn't make mistakes, but I believe that the devil does. On October 3rd, 2018, the devil showed up. Your Honor, as true veterans, we are taught to defend and protect our country from enemies both foreign and domestic. Law enforcement executing a warrant should not be seen as a foreign threat. The real domestic enemy was inside the home performing acts of sexual abuse. Protection was needed there. Your Honor, what was taken that day was a community hero, a father, a brother. My best friend. His name was Sergeant Terrence F. Carraway. I stand here today knowing God has two angels on duty watching over us. We are Carraway strong. Farrah Turner strong. And Florence strong. No cowardly act of violence will ever shake our faith in God. We will not let the memory and the legacy of Terrence Carraway and Investigator Farrah Turner be forgotten. We love you 272, FT 166, and salute to the Florence 7 and all the other brave men and women of law enforcement that continues to serve. God is.
Linus Muldrow.
Good afternoon. I'm Lamias Muldrow. Your Honor, I'm the surrogate brother of Terrence Carraway. The untimely death of Sergeant Terrence Carraway has negatively affected my life forever. Sometimes I find myself thinking about this and seems to think that it's a long nightmare, and when will it ever end? I may go for days or weeks and think I'm doing well. Then suddenly, something indescribable occurs, and I find myself confused and angry about this horrifying incident. For 5 years, we have been heavily burdened, and we ask, will justice ever be served? Even when justice is fulfilled, the question remains, is there really any justice? Will complete healing ever take place? This experience is like having a wound that never heals. Our lives have become inflamed due to a senseless act. Every time I hear of a police officer being killed due to violence, I'm deeply grieved because of my own experience. When this happens, it seems like I'm right back where this awful journey began. I believe that being a victim of this incident is one of the worst sufferings that one could ever experience. The anguish is forever.
Excuse me. One more, Synovia Arsenal.
My name is Synovia Arsenault, and I'm the sister of Terrence F. Carraway. On October the 3rd, Fred Hopkins' senseless action took the life of my brother, who was about to retire with 30 years of law enforcement. He was not only my brother, he was a beloved husband, father, uncle, and a friend to many in this community. Your foolish actions cut my brother's life short. My brother never got a chance to witness his son, my nephew, get married just 6 months from the day you savagely took it upon yourself to start shooting at law enforcement officers and eventually took his life. My great niece, who is only 3 years old, will never get a chance to see or touch her grandfather because of your idiotic action on October the 3rd, 2018. We as a family will never get a chance to ever hear his voice again, or his laughter, or get that great big hug or firm handshake from him, or see his smile that lit up a room. Your Honor, I ask that you impose the harshest sentence on this murderer. Hopkins has tormented my family and the rest of the families affected by his actions on October the 3rd by all of his delayed tactics. Today is a day our families have been waiting on for the last 5 years, and it's been a long 5 years waiting for justice. I know it really can't never be justice, but we've been waiting for this day. I hope you are tormented for the rest of your life, just as you have tormented ours for the last 5 of ours.
Thank you, Ms. Arsenault.
Your Honor, before we move on to Farrah Turner's family, we have an officer here in the court, Captain Scott McDonald, of Richmond County Sheriff's Office. He would be over, looking over telephone calls and jail conversations He kept up with that for us. We really appreciate it, praise him. One of the things I felt like it was brought to the court's attention, we put him up to testify on the oath if need be. But one of the conversations that Kelly had with Fred, and we're talking about the shooting, talking about Farrah, and Fred said to Kelly, said, I'm just taking out the trash with that. And that shows such an attitude void of anything human. I just feel like the court needs to know that.
And you say Detective Maldonado over here?
Yes, sir, Captain McDonald.
Captain McDonald's the one to monitor the phone calls?
Yes, sir.
And these jail calls were the ones between Mr. Hopkins and his daughter?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I don't think we need to present testimony to that effect, but
yes, sir.
Reprehensible. All right.
May it please the court, Your Honor?
Yes, sir.
Next, we move on to Farrah Turner's family with Ms. Katie Godwin, and I would just ask that she introduce anybody else that also wants to speak. But let me just briefly say, obviously, we've heard a good deal about what Farrah went through that day. The only thing that I would add briefly is the fact that, and I think Your Honor's aware of this, but she initially survived the 2 shots, and of course you heard the fact that he stood over her, fired the 2nd shot. She fought for 19 days, I believe it was. Her family fought right alongside her. The doctors fought. And I can tell the court that 4,000 pages of medical records generated by McLeod, they fought like hell to save her. Everybody did. And unfortunately, the injuries that were inflicted by the defendant were too much for her to overcome. I'm not going to get into the details. Your Honor has the autopsy report. When I say multiple surgeries and what she endured, I can't even begin to touch just how devastating her injuries were. But with that said, again, you don't need to hear from me anymore. I'm going to yield to Ms. Godwin and her family and anybody that wants to speak on Farrah's behalf.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yes, ma'am. It's Ms. Godwin.
Ms. Godwin, my name is Katie Godwin,
Very well.
Farrah Turner's mom. And I really thought I was going to be able to be strong today. But today feels like her funeral all over again. So if you don't mind, I'm going to have my niece, Brittany, come and read my statement for me.
Ma'am, whatever is comfortable for you. This is Brittany.
Yes.
Come right on up.
My name is Attorney Brittany Weaver, Investigator Farrah Turner. It's my first cousin. I'll be reading this on behalf of my Aunt Katie M. Godwin. Your Honor, the family of Investigator Farrah Turner has endured both emotional and physical trauma due to a senseless, horrific act of violence by Fred Hopkins. The memory of the countless hours my daughter suffered from gunshot wounds on October 3rd, 2018 is permanently etched in our minds. We helplessly watched her endure pain and suffering for 19 agonizing days as she fought for her life through surgery after surgery until her passing on October 22nd, 2018. Over the past several years, we've seen you, Fred Hopkins, come in and out of courtrooms, showing no remorse for murdering 2 police officers and attempting to murder 5 others. You look back at us, the victims, and even smirked in our faces while we sat there, overwhelmed by the pain you caused. In the depths of our heart, we wonder how a human being can harbor such an evil, almost demonic spirit. But the truth is, you are not a human being. You are subhuman. Innocent children entered your home who needed love, support, and shelter, but they were subjected to unthinkable horrors with no one to protect them. Then a brave child confided in my daughter and told her about the abuse. My daughter was a kind, compassionate, and dedicated young lady who selflessly served the citizens of Florence County for many years and excelled at her job. And just as she was closing in on your house of horrors, you ambushed her, shooting to kill her like the spineless coward you are. You shot her once, but that was not enough. You shot her the second time while she lay helpless in your front yard. I sat through the recent guilty plea hearing, listening to the vile things you said about my daughter and others. You specifically referred to her as the walking dead. I find it ironic because you are the walking dead. No privilege, legal tactics, no empty public statements, or no amount of money can save you now. You may be still breathing, but we all know you've been the walking dead since the moment you pulled the trigger on October 3rd, 2018. For a long time, a part of me wanted to see the death penalty imposed, but I've chosen a different path. I want you to live. The thought of you enduring the brutalities of general prison population rather than being protected in a cell while awaiting a penalty we all know you'll never live to receive brings me some comfort. I hope the general population treats you in the manner you truly deserve for the rest of your worthless natural life. You belong locked away, caged up with other murderers, child abusers, and rapists. When you can reflect on and experience the suffering you caused me, my family, and those children in that house of horrors before you leave this world. My heart will forever bear the weight of losing my child, Farrah Burdette Godwin Turner, affectionately known as Maxine. God blessed me with Maxine. Maxine was a gift to me. In the course of her duty, protecting children, you made the choice to take Maxine away from me, depriving her of the chance to start her own family and continue her travels to explore the world. But you did not deprive her of her lasting global impact. Thanks to you, Investigator Farrah Turner's name and courageous acts are known all over the world. She has inspired a new generation of law enforcement officers to eliminate predators that prey on vulnerable children. And every year, the Farrah Turner Foundation helps hundreds of children who are victims of sexual abuse and sexual assault. I'll leave you with this, Fred Hopkins. You can't kill what won't die. Investigator Farrah Turner lives on in me, her siblings, my family, and everyone that love her. May these words echo in your mind throughout the rest of your pitiful existence. Your Honor, this man has no place in society. I ask that you impose the maximum sentence for both murders and the maximum possible time for the 5 attempted murders. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Weaver.
Okay, next we'll have April Godwin. This is Investigator Farrah Turner's sister.
Hello, my name is April Godwin.
And on behalf of me and my siblings, Farrah Turner, which is Farrah, Maxine's twin, and my brother Ronald Turner. Farrah was born on April the 24th, 1982, to Katie and her father, the late Dexter Turner. 5 minutes before Farrah was born, her twin brother, Farrah Turner, was born. A few years later, the two were joined with their little brother by the name of Ronald Turner, that we call Mooka. And who knew at the age of 6 that the twins would have a baby sister? Yes, me. When the twins were 6 years old, my mommy had me, the baby of the bunch. The bond we shared as siblings was very special to us. We were inseparable. But you know, I thought our bond was everything, but on December the 12th of 2009, I birthed the little girl by the name of Elena Godwin, and she stole Farrah's heart. When you saw Farrah, you saw Elena. That was definitely her sidekick. On October the 3rd, 2018 was the day our lives changed forever. This day started out as a regular day for us all, but it ended in horror. It ended with hurt and pain for many people, families, and our community. Farrah was more than a daughter, sister, granddaughter, and aunt. She was truly all of our best friend. For 19 days, Farrah fought for her life, and we never left her side. We watched her fight hard as she went through surgery after surgery. We never lost hope. We prayed for a miracle. And then the day of October the 22nd, 2018 came, when Dr. Reynolds came in and he gave us a good report. Boy, was we happy. Farrah was finally improving. Then later on that day, Farrah took a turn for the worse when her blood pressure bottomed out. So as they prepared for us to go in the back to say our final goodbyes, I can remember my mom standing, holding Farrah by the right hand, and me standing, holding Farrah by the left hand. As we watched her take her last breath, at that moment, our world stopped. I remember yelling, "Sister, I need you. My mama needs you. Elena needs you." But it was too late. My sister was now resting. For 5 years, every court hearing, we sat and watched as Fred showed no remorse to our family and the other victims. You smiled and smirked as if you didn't have a care in the world, while we sat with our eyes full of tears, hoping and praying that one day justice would be served. Last week, I listened to you speak at your plea deal hearing, and the things you said about my sister just shows me what a jerk you really are. You said some mean and evil things, but that's expected coming from someone like you, an evil, low-life murderer like yourself. You said Farrah was a dead woman walking, but she died as she lived, fighting to protect innocent people. We will always remember her along with Terrence, Carraway, and the other 5 surviving officers. And now I would like to read the statement on behalf of my brother, her twin. I am Farrah Turner. Farrah Turner is my twin. On October the 3rd, 2018, I experienced the most puzzling pain I've ever experienced in my life. I didn't know the root of the problem at first, but I quickly learned my twin sister had been shot. Day in and day out, I paced the floors in restlessness, laying awake at night and feeling phantom pains from my twin as she fought for her life. 19 days we were joined in spirit as I endured the pain this monster imposed upon my twin sister. And for a lifetime, I missed out on my other half. Since that day, my life changed, and the struggle of not having her here has impacted me and my family in many ways. For her, I'll take the pain 1,000 times. For her, I'll give my life. For her, I'll continue to live. For her, I ask the judge to punish this monster to the fullest extent of the law. Long live Farrah. Next, we'll have a statement by Linda Weaver, who is Farrah's aunt and my mother.
My name is Linda Godwin Weaver, and I am the aunt of the late investigator Farrah Turner, affectionately known to her family as Maxine. We come from a large family. My mother had 12 children and raised 10. So Katie comes from a large family. When Farrah was born, I was standing beside the bed as she and her twin brother entered the world. When Farrah was born, she weighed less than 2 pounds, but she survived. I was also standing by the bed with my sister and my niece as Farrah took her last breath. It was hard watching her fight for 19 days after she was shot on October the 3rd. 9 surgeries And then her toes and her feet began to turn dark. We had to make the agonizing decision as we made the decision to have her legs amputated. She had both of her legs amputated right below the knee. And it was all because of a monster by the name of Fred Hopkins. Even after he shot her the first time and she laid there, I learned in one of the hearings that he shot her for the second time. Then he would not allow first responders to get there to render aid to her. So she laid there and she suffered. And she lost so much blood that both of her legs had to be amputated right below the knee. Only a monster could do what this person did. What did Farrah do on October the 3rd, 2018 to deserve what happened to her? She was doing what the citizens of Florence County expected her to do. She was investigating a crime against a child. Farrah was one of the oldest of my mother's 57 grandchildren. She was a bright, shining light in our family. Her life was not easy because she was raised in a single-parent home. But from the time she was 15 years old, she began working to help take care of herself and her siblings. My sister Katie gave birth to Farrah, but Farrah belonged to us. Her aunts and uncles and everybody loved Farrah. My mother, who is here today, is 87 years old, said that this is one of the hardest things that she's had to do in her entire life. Any of us would have given our lives to let Farrah live. She was the kindest, sweetest, hardworking person that you would ever meet in your life. When she was not working, one of the things she was doing was helping to care for her grandmother. Our lives have been changed forever. We will never be the same. Life as we knew it before October the 3rd, 2018 is over. No amount of medication can ease the pain and suffering that we go through daily. After graduating from Francis Marion University, it was my hope as her aunt that she would become a teacher and follow in my footsteps. But it was clear that she had a love for law enforcement. She wanted to serve and help protect people from harm. When she began working with victims of sexual assault and abuse, I expressed my concern to her because I felt like that was just dangerous. But she wanted to help those who were most vulnerable amongst us. She never met a stranger, and we have met numerous people who have told us that their lives were changed forever because of her. In my heart, I believe others knew or suspected the horrors that took place in the house of horror of Fred Hopkins, but decided not to say anything or just look the other way because of small town reputations and politics. However, after getting information about sexual abuse taking place, my niece, the late investigator Farrah Turner, could not and would not look the other way. She did her job because she believed no one was above the law, and she was not able to sit back and allow any child to suffer. This case has taught me a lot about the criminal justice system in America. As a retired teacher who taught U.S. history, American government, and civics for over 36 years, I received an education I will take to my grave. Our system is truly set up to give the criminal every advantage possible while victims and their families spend sleepless nights praying and hoping for some sense of justice. This murderer has played games with the system since day one and showed no remorse for victims and their families. And even to this day, I continue to hear negative and nasty and vile things this evil murdering monster has to say about one of the most beautiful human beings that was ever born on earth. I do not blame anyone for what's taken place in the system over the last 5 years, because I know that this system was put in place by our founding fathers. Nevertheless, I pray that God will take the hate that I feel for this man from my heart one day. Justice to me would be having him experience the same pain that my niece Farrah experienced. Having him go through 9 surgeries. Having him have both his legs amputated below the knee. And having him have his children, his family, stand and watch him take his last breath. However, I know this is not possible because the coward pled guilty. But I ask that Your Honor give him the maximum punishment that you can today. It will not bring my niece nor Sergeant Terrence Carraway back or take away the pain and suffering from the other officers, but it will give us some sense of peace in knowing that he, this subhuman, will never have an opportunity to do this again. We are God-fearing people, and God has kept us this long, and He will continue to keep us. As Christian people, we believe that He will stand before God one day and answer for these horrific acts. I find comfort in knowing that this monster will burn in hell one day. I just pray that that day will come sooner than later.
Thank you, Ms. Weaver.
And finally, we'll have a statement by Thomas.
Thank you. Thomas McFadden, Your Honor. Please the court.
Yes.
I'm gonna talk slow here. Fate and destiny, Your Honor. That's what I believe in. All of us were born with a purpose. We all here for a reason. Fate and destiny. October 3rd, 2018, I was an investigator with the Sheriff's Office. I heard Farrah tell her stories about this house, Fred Hopkins, and how she was gonna save these kids. She would talk about at workout. Sarah would be at workout, sweet Sarah. Ben would come to workout. Ari was bright, young, she wanted to conquer the world. I'm gonna be the sheriff one day. I'm gonna run this county. I remember that, all them talking. Farrah, ambitious, she wanted to learn everything. I worked homicide. So she wanted to learn homicide, she wanted to do everything, but she was great at what she did. And I remember that day, Thursday, we switched days. So I told people we had to stop saying what if, or we could change this day. This day was gonna happen, y'all, regardless. When that sperm hit that egg, when Farrah was born, this was gonna happen. When that sperm hit the egg when Hopkins was born, this day was gonna happen, regardless. Everybody that was there was supposed to be there. Ben say he's not a hero. Ben is a hero. Everybody was heading to that fatal funnel, and he was yelling, "Stop coming in." If my whole entire career, and we could get these last calls, the final call, and I promise you, if I hear another one, I don't want to hear one ever in my life. But we get these final calls, these last calls for the officer, knowing they're not going to answer this radio. That's a horrible thing. But when I'm going to fate and destiny, and Farrah was at the school that morning, and she was still talking about that search warrant. She was going to do it that Wednesday, but I needed her to change days with me so I can coach my football game. But she was saying who she was going to have there, and when that radio went off, I got a call from one of the other investigators. Farrah going to the search warrant. I said, yes, she told me this morning. They're going to the search warrant. So the radio goes up. He was like, well, she got enough people. She got 5. I said, yeah, that's more than enough. They're good. But see, since 2004, I knew people was going to the Hopkins house. There were several investigators that would go to the Hopkins house. And always thinking, oh, something off, a little bit off. The kids kind of crazy. No, the kids weren't crazy. The kids were acting up. They were acting out. They were suffering. They were taken from broken home, put into another broken environment, being taken advantage of. So when he says that, 5 minutes later, the radio goes off. And I know the city said pinged out, but it been yelling on the radio. Officer down. Officer Farrah Turner is down. And it echoed. And I got a call. Did you just hear being on the radio? Yes. We all is on the way. Then everybody going, then you flying to get there, running through traffic. God know what to get there. Then all of a sudden you get to the scene and Ben says, stop coming in. Stop coming in here. They are picking us off. And then you hear the city going, I think Terrence down. That ain't good. Now Scott hit, now somebody ran through a house. No, they hit somebody else in the hand. And you can hear the sound. And then they call Farrah family before this get out. So Farrah had already sold her house and moved home. So I got to call Granny phone. Now I work homicide, so I have to tell a lie because I could hear the sound on his radio. I know what he's shooting and at high power. And I'm thinking, she can't be here. And I wasn't gonna call her phone because I don't want her moving. Again, to get another shot, I was just said, pretend like you did. Take the one shot and just lay there. Not knowing finally later that he shot again to assassinate her. And so I'm calling Katie's phone. She at a conference, and I'm calling Granny house. I'm calling one of the cousins was finally got to the house, but I know April gonna be on Facebook. I know she gonna be on Facebook. But April calls her sister. She makes a call, and she say, call my mama. That's what she said. I've been shot. Call my mama. But see, doing these workouts, when I say fate and destiny, see, Farrah, when we made an oath, y'all, I promise you we made an oath, and we would take y'all no matter what, not one step backwards. And she said it. She was getting out the truck doing all this time. And they were worried. Something had to be going on because she got out the truck and she said, come on, let's work out. I said, come on, all right, we can work out. He said, I have my family fussing. They talking about be careful. They don't want me in law enforcement. They worry about me, something happened to me dying or something happened to me. I don't care. I told them I got a job to do and I'm gonna do my job. That's why I told them on October 3rd she was gonna do her job, not one step back. Nothing will change that day. Yo, all y'all heroes, everyone, the dispatchers had to hear us. We family. You gotta think about the dispatchers hearing us calling the names that they know and speak to every day. The other first responders, they come to get us off the ground. We couldn't get on the ground. Highland's standing at the wall. They telling us to stop. Y'all get down. Ben said this man is picking us off. And then they weren't even close. At 300, 400 yards, it's picking us off. With nothing. I'm running to the trunk trying to find my rifle. It ain't in the car. So it was chaotic that day. A chaotic day. Then you talking about visiting everybody at the hospital. You're going to see Sarah. Going to check on Farrah, going to see Rhea. Rhea had to be on some good medicine too because she wanted me to see her leg. Want me to look at this injury. Have you seen my pictures of my leg? And thank God she even survived that, y'all. They say she wouldn't even have a leg. Sarah wasn't gonna make it. Farrah probably wasn't gonna make it. Terrence was already gone. I couldn't even get over the part that Terrence was gone. Terrence was an investigator, so I used Terrence when I was in the city. He was my connection in the city. I say I'm the greatest investigator in the world because I had other people helping me. But Terrence would give me all my information from the city. So I would always get him. We ride. He was my connect guy. He played football for the Golden Bears. He was bad tight end too. He was a good athlete. Yeah. So Terrence, this day was gonna happen from day one, even from every last. God knew y'all was gonna be there. I told Farrah I was gonna be there, but I knew I wasn't gonna be there because Farrah did the search warrant too late. I want to do mine early in the morning. I was not gonna be there. Everybody that was there for a reason. That's why I don't hold my head down. He made all of them martyrs. I was Farrah escort officer, and I promise you, when we got in the room and we had to get a debrief, and thank God for the debriefs we had here, they said, me and the captain said, Florence County, and they said, y'all don't have to tell y'all story. The whole world know y'all. The whole entire world knew Florence because of that incident. He knew y'all were heroes. They looked up to us. The stuff that happened, I was told Farrah, Katie, you gonna see all the great things they did. Stuff Terrence did. He coached kids. The great stuff, people will always remember. Long after we are dust, they will remember them. I told legacy. So when that sperm hit the egg, when she was born, she was already on the clock. When Fred hit Fred, he was already on the clock. Fred started off good. I always tell people, it's not how you start in life, how you finish. At the end of the day, what you want your legacy to be when you lay down. Do you want people to lie over you, have to make up stories? I tell how great you were. It's not how you start, how you finish. But Farrah was born, I promise you, everything she did led up to that day. protecting kids. She had love, she cherished kids. Fred lust over kids. There was a difference. Some way he went wrong. He served this great country, but some way he went wrong. He destroyed his legacy, but he created great legacy with all y'all. Your Honor, no matter what the sentence you give him, he won't be able to do it. And we know that because of his age. But I ask he do the best he can, and I pray he live forever.
Thank you, sir.
That concludes our statements. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, ma'am. Solicitor, I've heard from all 7 families. Do you have much more? I think that may be a good time to take a short break for anybody that needs to use the restroom. But we'll stand at ease for a few minutes. If it. We'll stand at ease. I'm going to step off and use the restroom and get some water, and then I'm going to come back in and sit, and I'll wait patiently for everybody because I don't know the facilities can handle the whole room going out one time, but I'll wait. We're not going to start back quick till everybody gets back in the courtroom, so we'll stand at ease for about 15 minutes. All right, back on the record, Ms. Ray. Solicitor, what else you have?
You got 3 more outside, I think is what they just told me. Is that correct? Yeah. 3 more to come in.
Okay. We'll stand patient. You have a full courtroom. Solicitor, we've heard from the victim's family. Oh, anything else from the state?
No, we got 2 more, and then I'll summarize.
All right.
We'd like to call Sheriff T.J. Joy.
Thank you, Solicitor. Pleases the court, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
First, let me say that I have witnessed so much pain and suffering during this ordeal. And I've known Sarah Miller since she was a little girl. Her father was on the highway patrol with me for over 35 years back in the day. Good people, and it hurts my heart to see these people, these victims, suffering and struggling with this since this act. October the 3rd, 2018 is a date that law enforcement in Florence County will never forget. It will be remembered forever. I know I won't ever forget it. We lost 2 heroes. 2 heroes. And Miss Katie, I'm so sorry for your loss. Miss Carraway, I'm so sorry for your loss. The emotional wounds may not be seen, but inside you will struggle with this for the rest of your life. And I know that. I've dealt with Ben and Sarah and their emotional battle that they have. It's heart-wrenching for me. It's sad. With this phase of the judicial process now concluded, our prayers is that additional healing will occur, but we will never forget any of them. All of you are heroes, and I'm honored to see you day in and day out continue what you do best, is protect and serve. God bless you all.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you, Judge.
You know, I'd like to call Chief Allen Highway, Florence City Police.
Your Honor, if it pleases the court.
Chief, if you would, I would like for you to address up to this date how there's still people dealing with the wounds from this event.
Absolutely. I'd like to first say, you all are unbelievable. I love you guys.
It was a tough day. This has been a tough month. I'm here on behalf of the men and women of the Florence Police Department, dedicated law enforcement officers who put their lives on the line every day to protect this community. This month, we've not only recognized the 5-year anniversary of the cowardly ambush that took the lives of Sergeant Terrence, Carraway, and Investigator Turner, and severely injured Scotty, Maria, Sarah, Brian, Travis, but we have also endured the flood of emotions associated with the guilty plea from last week and the subsequent sentencing hearing today. You see, Your Honor, in the absence of physical scars, there are non-visible emotional scars suffered by officers and deputies that are not apparent because of how well they are masked. Concealed wounds that run deep in both agencies and will be with many of us for the rest of our lives. I'm referring specifically to the mental trauma that exists from those fearless and valiant acts of bravery that I personally witnessed that day from officers who, without wavering, threw themselves into that deadly situation, never given a thought about their own safety, and with the sole focus on rescuing their comrades and stopping the deadly havoc being wreaked by a violent gunman. Your Honor, we suffer from unimaginable distress associated with a friend and colleague and the loss thereof, Sergeant Terrence Carraway, who made the ultimate sacrifice that day, compounded by the loss of Investigator Farrah Turner 19 days later. And it's not just our officers. There's trauma suffered by our administrative staff and our county dispatchers as they helplessly listened to that horror taking place on the radio that day. In fact, there's few first responders or citizens of this city or county that weren't affected by what took place on October 3rd of 2018. But my point here is that there was virtually no member of the Florence Police Department or the Florence County Sheriff's Office that was untouched by the madness we were thrust into on that day. Your Honor, I feel certain that you put your trust in the Florence Police Department and the Florence County Sheriff's Office to do our jobs and uphold the color of law. Today, we put our trust and our faith in you to uphold the justice of this court. You cannot give Terrence and Farrah back to us. Nor can you remove the physical and emotional scars suffered on that tragic day 5 years ago. But on behalf of the Florence Police Department, I'm asking you that you hold Fred Hopkins accountable and you sentence him to the maximum sentence by law. That's all I have.
Chief.
Your Honor, I was late getting in the case, as you know. I am from a neighboring circuit, lived in Florence for 10 years, and so when this happened, I just want to say to everybody involved in law enforcement, and even though, of course, you know, I prosecuted in the 4th Circuit, the neighboring circuit, this is our sister circuit, but we all hurt for what y'all went through that day and for what y'all still are going through. And the last thing I'll say is this, because this is not about me, Your Honor, so I don't really need to say much other than we stand with you, and I have no doubt that despite everything that happened, these ladies and gentlemen of law enforcement, if something goes off right now, they would be exiting this building to go into harm's way to protect us. And that is something that is not lost on us. We appreciate it, and God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Your Honor, please record.
Yes, sir.
Thinking about this and looking through this, I would hate for any of us to make the mistake this was somehow just accidental act of rage, because it was not. You can look at the facts and look and see what was done and what's been said, and you can identify Farrah Turner as a victim that was by intent of Fred Hopkins. He said enough. You've heard what he said about her. He was upset. She was the one that was coming in. She was the one that had the search warrant. She was the one that was going to enter into his home and talk to his children and possibly bring what all we don't know to light. But there was definitely something there. There was something there that caused him to focus on Farrah. Other than that, this does not make any sense. Why would something like this happen? Why would he get COVID and start shooting everybody? It's something we will never know what it was, but it turned the tide that day, because you heard them testify about how they've been out to Fred and Cheryl's house many, many times. Those children were getting into trouble all the time, right and left. They were there, and they came to that house many times, and there was nothing like this happen. Nothing. Why on this occasion? And why Farrah? Nobody else was shot twice. He came out from his hiding place under the front of the house to make sure he shot her twice. Shot her execution style. He meant for her to die. And anything, you've heard how this has affected so many members of the family and of the community. What a jewel she was in the community. Nothing short of a maximum sentence would satisfy this at all, in my opinion. Anything else would be like a slap in the face. We were seeking the death penalty on this, and I think if anybody deserves the death penalty, it might be Mr. Hopkins. But because of a lot of the factors and how long it takes things to move in the judicial system sometimes, and his age, getting older very quickly, we didn't want him to escape judgment by us having to write on an indictment and all prosecute the death of the defendant. We didn't want to see that happen at all. We wanted him to go out of here as he is a convicted murderer of police. He's pled to it, the plea's been accepted. And you know the law, 2 law enforcement officers are killed. Either one killed, you could have gone for the death penalty. So we had 2 we could go for the death penalty on. You could have killed 2 people together in the same situation, same scenario, also get the death penalty for that. We had what we needed to go for the death penalty. We just didn't have enough time. If Mr. Hopkins was younger, if he was 39, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. But the thing that's bothered me the whole time I was listening intently while I wasn't talking, and I haven't heard something that I could keep waiting for. And I was waiting and waiting, and I thought we were going to hear it in Aiken. I thought I was going to hear it. Nope. Backed away. Thought we were approaching it again. Nope. Didn't happen. And so here I am lost with what I would think in my way I'm built and the way I'm made is that you have remorse for things you do bad. You have a feeling of guilt that you have to deal with. But I have heard absolutely no shred of remorse in this. I've heard absolutely no acceptance of responsibility whatsoever in this. No feelings of guilt. Just taking out the trash. Taking out the trash. We've had people here to testify that he said the night beforehand that he was going to shoot the police. They came to his house. He was going to blow them away. And that's exactly what he did. And he was prepared. When they came and knocked on the door, he was prepared. And he started shooting. And everybody in law enforcement thought because the tactical decision you usually make is for higher ground, they thought somebody was up in the second floor shooting. So they peppered that area tremendously with bullets. But he was down right in front door where he walks down into that sunken den light with an oak desk around him, protecting him. He could look out that door and look down 300, 400, 500 yards down straight away. He had an absolutely perfect shooting alley, and he had the skills to utilize it. And trying to say he thought he was under attack, Terrence Carraway doesn't look like a North Vietnamese guy to me at all. But he shot him, and how's he gonna tell from a distance? They got a gun, a handgun, and they're gonna be a direct detriment or unsafe for him when he could pick them off at any time? This was one of the coldest things I've ever seen. I've seen things before in cases where people have just tremendous rage or problems, but this was just cold. Nothing but cold. He was gonna shoot them. They come to my house, I'm gonna shoot them. They send more. They got to come down this alleyway straight in front of me to get to my house. I'm gonna shoot some more. And that's what he did. And he would have continued to be doing that if Helen Kane had not talked him out of it and got him to come out and lay his weapon down. But there's no reason on earth that he had to shoot Terrence Carraway other than Terrence just happened to show up in the wrong place at the wrong time, doing what they all do, these brave men and women, and that is they guard their brothers and sisters. They don't hesitate. The talk comes out, they go. They respond. And we don't want to dishonor them today by giving some sentence that anybody could complain would be too light. Anybody could complain that that's not the most you could get. And look what he did. And Your Honor, that's why I'm here, and I am asking you to convict him of murder for life on Terrence Carraway, and convict him of murder for life consecutive on Farrah Turner. And for the remaining 5 that were shot, there's 30 years on each of their accounts that you can charge him with, and we're going to ask you to do that too, and to make them all consecutive. Nothing else would come close to touching this, Your Honor. Nothing else would come close to touching the horrendous things that he did to keep our safekeepers under fire. And they were just simply doing their job. Simply doing their job. But he's shown no remorse. He's shown no want for forgiveness. He's shown nothing but just completely hostile demeanor. He doesn't care. He wants to try to blame Mercer on killing Farrah, calling her a dead man, a dead woman walking. What an affront to this family. After all this, that the murderer of your child, your sister, your friend, your colleague, your work colleague, that is dead man walking. How crass is that? I could sit up here and, Your Honor, I could rant and rave, and I could give you 100 more reasons why nothing less than a life sentence would not be suitable at all. But you've been doing this a long time, just as I have. And you know, when it gets right down to it, we do our best that we can, and we try. But really, it's lots of times it's just completely out of our hands to give justice. We can't reach it. We can't touch it. We strive for it. I'm going to ask you, Judge, I'm going to ask you to reach to the top shelf on this one and strive as hard as you can. Because you know all these facts, and you've been doing this for a long time. And give consecutive life sentences and consecutive attempted murder sentences. Thank you.
Thanks, Solicitor. For the media's benefit, the clerk of court was asked after the plea this week to see copies of the sentencing sheets, and so I want to show those to you. They're blank. Nothing was done in Aiken before we got these folks in here to be heard from. So I want to give all the assurance to the families that I wanted to hear from y'all first. Thank y'all for y'all's courage. If y'all bear with me, I've got to fill these out, and then I'll read the sentence. So we'll stand at these for a moment as I do this.
One thing, Your Honor, For those who are interested, there's going to be a press conference outside, out on the front steps. Is that correct, Madam Clerk? For anybody that's concerned about that.
I was told, solicitor, for the record, that Mr. Hopkins to date has served 1,842 days for purposes of the sentencing. Is that your understanding as well?
That's my understanding. Mr. Young showed me that, and I don't disagree with that.
Very well. Y'all bear with me. All right, before I read the sentence, I want to acknowledge that it's my hope that the conclusion of this case and the sentencing will bring closure to the families of the victims and the victims themselves and to the Florence community as a whole and the PD. It's a big family down here and y'all deserve closure. Where I attend church, and you got to keep your faith, where I attend church, my pastor tells us every Sunday, God loves you, and so do I. And so y'all remember that, each and every one of you. Mr. Young and Mr. Hopkins, I want to remind you all have a certain number of days in which to file a notice of intent to appeal, if that's so your intent regarding any procedures that took place, for the record. Indictment 2020 GS 21-909 has 7 counts. 2 counts murder, 5 counts attempted murder. The 2 murder sentences carry life sentences. The 5 attempted murder sentences each carry 30, and they're to be served consecutively. I hope that's a message to others. This type of behavior is not to be tolerated. That concludes the hearing.